All right, let's dive into a book that really takes a hammer to the statue of a national hero. It's called The Idle Man, Mustafa Kemal Atatürk. Now, our goal here isn't to pick sides, agree or disagree. We're just here to unpack its explosive central claim that one of the 20th century's most revered figures was, well, a carefully constructed myth. And this quote, wow, it basically sums up the entire argument of the book in just a few lines. The author is saying that Ataturk wasn't just a leader, he was an idol. An object of worship, specifically engineered to do one thing. And what was that one thing? To cut an entire nation off from its own past. I mean, that is a seriously provocative idea, and that's exactly what we're going to dig into. Okay, so let's get into the book's main thesis. What was the purpose of creating this so-called idol? Well, according to the author, this was no accident. It was all part of a grand design. The book argues that the heroic image of Ataturk that most of us are familiar with today is a total fabrication, deliberately and meticulously crafted. And the argument the author makes is, it's huge. We're not just talking about political reform here. The book claims this was a project of total societal engineering. So from this perspective, you have to look at everything differently. Every famous story, every celebrated victory, it all gets reinterpreted through this one single lens. That it was all part of a systematic plan to dismantle 1,000 years of Islamic and Ottoman identity, just to build a new secular nation from the ground up. Now, to back up a claim that radical, you've got to have some evidence, right? So the book goes all the way back to the beginning. It starts casting some serious doubt on the official story of how Ataturk even rose to power. The author argues his motivations weren't just about patriotism, they were part of a much bigger, long-term ideological plan. And the book tries to lay out a trail of evidence to prove it. So the book pieces together this timeline that just completely reframes his entire career. You see his involvement with that influential secularist group, the Committee of Union and Progress, back in 1908. The book says that's step one in this ideological crusade. Then you jump to 1923 and the founding of the Republic. The author argues that wasn't the end of a war for independence. No, that was the final move to shatter the Ottoman Caliphate. But then there's this one year, 1920, that the author says is really revealing. And this is what the author presents as the smoking gun. It's a quote supposedly from a secret memo Ataturk wrote in 1920, and it suggests he was willing to make a strategic alliance with Bolshevik Russia, basically opening the gates for them into the entire region, all to fight the West. So for the author, this isn't a picture of a patriot saving his country. It's a revolutionary who's willing to do anything, even team up with communists to get his secular state. So that vision of a secular state, well, that brings us right to the heart of the book's entire critique, the famous reforms. Where official history books see modernization and progress, this author sees something way, way darker. They see it as a direct and brutal assault on Turkish identity itself. Now, to really get the weight of this argument, you have to understand what the caliphate represented, at least from the book's perspective. We're not just talking about a political office here. This was seen as the 1,000-year-old spiritual anchor of the people. It connected them to their history, their faith, and their entire role as leaders of the Islamic world. And that's exactly why abolishing the caliphate in 1924 is framed as a point of no return. In the author's view, this one single act basically, well, it spiritually decapitated the nation. It cut Turkey off from its own past, from its neighbors, and forced this new, Western-facing identity onto it. And here's one of the book's most powerful points, this idea of a war on words, a war on the language itself. The author argues that switching from the Arabic-based Ottoman script to a Latin alphabet, that wasn't about improving literacy. No, it was an act of cultural vandalism. Think about it. Overnight, 1,000 years of literature, law, and history became impossible for the average person to read. An entire generation was created that was literally cut off from the writings of their own grandparent. And the book just keeps going, detailing this cascade of other reforms that it calls part of this systematic transformation. You've got the hat law, which banned the traditional fez and made people wear Western hats. Then there's the wholesale adoption of European legal codes, completely replacing Islamic law. Religious schools and lodges shut down. Even the call to prayer was changed from Arabic to Turkish, and the official day of rest was moved from the Islamic holy day, Friday, to the Christian Sunday. According to the author, every single one of these reforms was like another deliberate blow from a chisel, just chipping away at the nation's core identity. So let's pull all this together. We've talked about the book's claim of a manufactured hero, a suspicious rise to power, and a revolution against identity itself. So where does that leave us? Well, The final section of the book ties all of these threads together to deliver its ultimate and pretty damning verdict on Ataturk's legacy. Yeah, the book's final judgment is there's no ambiguity. It concludes that Ataturk's legacy is one of profound cultural loss, that he created a nation that's alienated from its own past. It argues his secular state was only achieved by serving foreign interests. And in the end, by building this powerful cult of personality, he basically replaced God with the state and put himself, the idol, right at the very center of it all. So in the end, the argument of the idol man leaves us with this really fundamental question. And look, whether you agree with its thesis or not, it forces you to ask, how are national heroes actually made? And maybe more importantly, who's holding the pen that writes their stories? It's just a powerful reminder that history isn't just a simple set of facts. It's really a battlefield of different narratives. And the version we end up hearing might not be the only truth out there.